I'm Jeff Round. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at the Institute of Health Economics. I'll be the facilitator for today's session. And I'd really like you all to join me in welcoming our presenter for this NOAHE Rounds, Dr. Liz Schroeder. Dr. Schroeder works in the Health Economics and Policy Evaluation Group at the Nuffield Department of Primary Care, which is based at the University of Oxford in the UK. Her expertise lies in economic evaluations of public health, complex public health interventions, specifically applied to the fields of digital health innovations, mental health, children's social care, and perinatal health. Today's topic is economic assessment of digital health innovation, something that's at the forefront of many policymakers' minds in my experience over the last couple of years. And Dr. Schroeder is going to talk to us about how digital health sits at the intersection between applied economics, utilizing quasi-experimental design and econometrics, economic evaluation, digital health analytics, and complexity theories in implementation science. Incorporating an economic lens is important for decision makers such as NICE in the UK or CDA, AMC here in Canada, regarding balances in costs and effects, disruption to distributional equity, scope and scalability, and value for money offered by potential digital innovations. Budgets need to curb health and social care costs while delivering high value care in a context of workforce shortages, devolved governance, widening social inequality, population aging, and a rising prevalence of complex and chronic diseases. So that's a quick summary of what we'll be hearing about today. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. Participants will be muted throughout the webinar. To submit any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A function. And the Q&A answering your questions will be facilitated during the final 20 minutes. So I will facilitate that conversation. So please, any questions you have, please do put them in the Q&A. And with that, thank you for joining us. And I will hand over to Dr. Schroeder.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'll just load my slides here. And hope that is in slide sharing mode as well as that you're able to see and hear from me.
It is in slide sharing mode. So
super. Thank you so much. Thanks for the confirmation. So hello, everyone. It's absolutely lovely to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me to join your webinar series. I was instructed to make this not technical, so I'll say up front, this is not a technical presentation. It's more about the regulatory environment within which we are working in the UK. Now my slide's not moving. Sorry. That way. There we go. So this is a slightly more youthful photo of me with apologies, but I've included it so that if anyone would like to join or connect via LinkedIn or to look me up on the website, if you have any further questions after today, you're most welcome. As Jeff said, I'm a health economist primarily working in economic evaluations of complex public health interventions. I'm a standing committee member for the UK's Medical Technology Advisory Committee at NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, and I'll reference some of their work and developments in their regulatory approach. But of course, in this presentation, I represent myself only, so all views and errors are my own. I've worked in Oxford for most of my career, initially at the National Perinatal Epidemiology Unit, then a 7-year hiatus in Sydney, Australia. There I was Associate Professor at the Centre for the Health Economy and also the Economics Commissioner to the National Mental Health Commission. So as mentioned, I'm currently in the Nuffield Department of Primary Care Health Sciences at Oxford. We're quite a large department and our key research themes are cancer, cardiovascular and metabolic health, infection, respiratory and acute care, evidence-based medicine, and clinical trials. We're also well known for building a large suite of big data sets for data analytics. By way of example, we host a data set called ORCID, which is a disease surveillance platform covering 60 years. holding data from multiple UK clinical systems and which can link primary care data to other healthcare data. There's Q Research, which is an electronic health record database from over 35 million patients, with data coming from approximately 1,500 general practices across England. Then we have Open Safely, which is an analytics platform of 58 million patients, full pseudonymized NHS records, created to deliver rapid results during COVID. And then Open Prescribing, providing 5 years of NHS data on medicines prescribed by GPs across England with over 600 million data entries. So there are more data sets on our website, and these are directly accessible if people would wish to consider them in research applications. Finally, the department is building an Institute of Digital Health. This supports research collaboration and also hosts a master's in applied digital health. And so we have a module for the economics of applied digital health as part of this program. This is a snapshot of a small part of our health economics team. We look like a rather motley crew because the photo was rather unfairly taken just as we were about to embark on an episode of punting, which many of you will know is very popular in Oxford and looks idyllic unless you actually want to punt, in which case it turns out to require some agility and significant steering skills. But as with many health economics policy groups, we undertake a broad range of analyses, mainly across 3 areas, which are economic and econometric techniques applied across health systems research, measurement and valuation of health outcomes, and economic evaluation. So I was asked to provide my thoughts on the assessment of digital health innovations with reference to the UK policy environment. And I thought broadly I'd speak to the construct of digital health and some unique criteria, methodological approaches to evaluating digital health innovations, and considerations when exploring the economics of digital health. So digital health is an umbrella term that refers to the engagement of digital innovation in healthcare. This can be broad-ranging and extensive, harnessing data through digital technologies held in software and computing platforms to create new tools. The tools can be categorized by their methods of data analytics or their application in the transformation of healthcare. Digital transformation refers to the digitizing of services that have traditionally been delivered or physically or on paper. Increased connectivity and reliance on innovations are enabled by advances in technology. So here we have the WHO's 6 building blocks of a health system, and we can derive that digital transformation is essentially the digitalization of each one. We have health and service delivery, and we can employ instead telehealth or video consultations and other automated procedures. There's workforce. We can employ AI script taking and decision support tools. For information systems, we can use electronic linked health records. For essential treatments, we can include AI-supported diagnostic imaging, clinical risk predictions, medical devices with digital components. Changes in financing and funding models are required to support digitization, and leadership governance and new regulations are required to support and to provide guardrails for citizens' ethics, safety, privacy, and autonomy. So as a result of this digitization, we essentially create a new digital health infrastructure or ecosystem. Now, there are many approaches to classifying digital health innovations. This one is a somewhat helpful reference, which looks at component orientation. These can be industry and administrative facing, such as operational software. They can be healthcare professional facing, such as providing clinical management support, or they can be patient-related devices, including digital diagnostics and therapeutics, care support, and monitoring. The WHO brought out their own digital health taxonomy back in 2018, and they also considered 4 positioning categories, be they for patients or clients, healthcare providers, managers, and data services. And so while organizations might construct their categorization of DHIs with nuance, depending on their purpose, there are similarities in approaches. So for evaluating digital health innovation, I would argue that there are 4 aspects that need to be considered. We've already discussed the digital health component, but after this, evaluation techniques that consider cost efficiencies within a system need to be combined with applied economics and a complexity science and implementation lens. So essentially, there's a sweet spot for evaluation in the middle of this Venn diagram. The starting point, of course, is what is the purpose of the evaluation? And in the absence of that, I'll lead you to the UK's Department of Health and Social Care Medical Technology Strategy. It aims to achieve the right product at the right price in the right place. So to support the strategy, the UK's Digital Health Department of Health has an evaluation and regulatory ecosystem, where frameworks and guidance are designed to sit alongside other regulatory and technical standards. They have many overlapping aspects, though the landscape for digital healthcare and artificial intelligence regulation is still at a formative stage. Examples of these in the UK include the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, which regulates for the safety, quality, and efficacy, including software of medical devices. They have recently announced a software and AI as a medical device change program, aiming to ensure that medical device regulation is fit for purpose with particular scrutiny of the AI component. Then we have NHS DTAC, which provides national standards of DHIs across 5 categories. These categories cover clinical safety, data protection, technical security, interoperability, and usability and accessibility. And DTAC approval is required before there can be any progression to submission to NICE. The UK Care Quality Commission does not set out criteria for evaluation, but regulates and inspects services in England, and some technologies that are used in the delivery of care may be within the remit of CQC inspections. The key player for setting out evaluation principles is, of course, NICE, the UK's health technology assessment body. It has produced an evidence standards framework to help with the evaluation of DHIs, recognizing unique characteristics and challenges. And they include the rapidity of development and updating, leading to less or lower quality evidence able to be provided for appraisal when compared to drugs and devices. Data security, privacy, and confidentiality is likely to be impacted by machine learning, which poses additional challenges such as model adaptiveness, device autonomy, and limited output explainability, and the consequences of human technology interaction in clinical settings. So the framework for DHI evaluation has 5 categories covering all aspects of the product life cycle that together include 21 factors. They look at design, product value, evidence of performance, value for money, and implementation or deployment. There are 21 factors that I list across the next 2 slides, and I won't read them all. They're interesting, but I've highlighted some that are perhaps less obvious, including acceptability and usability aspects that speak to equity or vulnerability in subpopulations. Certainly, there is a strong directive for describing explicit and transparent value offered by the DHI system or process. There must be demonstrable performance, including the presentation of real-world evidence to show how DHI benefits can be realized. Value for money requires both a financial budget impact assessment and a CEA. and deployment requires proof for scalability. Now, alongside this, NICE has prepared a structured approach for their own scope for evaluation by laying out the likelihood of decision risk according to the classification of the DHI across 3 tiers. Tier A is the lowest risk category for clinical decision making, as it impacts only services or processes regarding costs or gains and efficiencies. Tier B explores different approaches for enabling communication and information sharing for patients to self-manage their health and healthcare, perhaps wearable health tracking devices or aids for promoting healthy lifestyles. And Tier C is the highest level of decision risk and has now become the focus of NICE MTAC. They note the need for clinical input, review, monitoring, and evaluation where there is heightened clinical risk. Broadly, highest risk includes DHIs that support the diagnosis or treatment of a condition and drive clinical management. NICE perhaps differs in that it's one body, in that it is one body compared to other HTA bodies where there can be more than one. And so essentially it provides oversight for HTA for medicines, for devices, diagnostics, guidelines for services, and sequences of care pathways. And so it's taken the pragmatic decision to limit its scope to Tier C applications, leaving Tiers A and B to other forces, be they market forces or other regulatory jurisdictions. They do, however, recognize that adaptations or convergence in certain technologies, such as hybrid technologies, will require those technologies to be considered Tier C risk. An example of this is hybrid closed loop technology for type 1 diabetes. That includes insulin, which is an old medicine, a device, an insulin pump, another device, a sensor, and an algorithm. A third aspect around a change in regulatory processes as NICE considers its vision for the next 25 years is an enhanced focus on timeliness for speed and efficiency in their own decision-making processes. As part of this progression, it has introduced a categorization to appraise DHIs throughout their product life cycle and to accommodate for varying levels of decisions uncertainty based on national priorities. So their early value assessment guidance looks at processes for emerging health tech, considering technologies which address national unmet need, rapidly assessing products early in the life cycle that need further evidence to support wider adoption. Then they have multi-tech guidance, which assesses products that have not been adopted widely, but have substantial evidence to produce benefit, and that's the usual HTA process that we would think about. Finally, they have late-stage multi-tech guidance appraising categories of products already in use within the NHS system, but where there may be an element of change, such as incremental innovation or perhaps a form of price creep. And across this, NICE is also looking at other techniques for decision-making and cost-effectiveness determined decision-making, such as multi-criteria decision analysis. So these two slides present a flowchart about the appraisal and decision-making process, revised to potentially create more efficient pathways for HTA management. This is available at the reference, as is this next one, that looks at how criteria and expectations about evidence generation now differ across the product life cycle, including pre-authorization such as horizon scanning, commissioning, and scaled adoption. So what about for us researchers? Do we also need to pivot to other approaches to appraising evidence? And there is perhaps an argument to be had for a trade-off between aspects of rapidity and incrementality of innovation, complexity of product design, and rigor of evaluation. An initial and somewhat superficial comment is that there may be place for more rapid reviews of data, gathering and evidence generation, or quicker cycles of evidence review, and equally for some new creative methods that can connect the grades of evidence where full clinical trials might be deemed to be too slow. We probably haven't explored this fully as yet in academic circles, but there are emerging signs of innovative trial and study designs that employ greater use of a variety of statistical techniques, including Bayesian modeling. However, I would start by saying that for the purposes of rigor, the guidance that we do already have in our toolkits is a solid starting point with perhaps some additional scaffolding. So this is a form of a stepped approach to drawing together the stages of evaluation that might be prepared for a full economic appraisal of a DHI, wherever these stages might be needed. Step 1 is an explicit scaffold in a research design, which aims to support our understanding of the innovation itself and its inherent complexities. It's guided by the research of Elizabeth Murray, published all the way back in 2016. And the approach taken here is to provide a construct for evaluating the DHI according to a definition of the problem, whether there's a clear health need, which the DHI is intended to resolve, and a clear defined population that can benefit, and then to explore and deconstruct the likely benefit of the DHI according to its components. Is it likely to reach the population, and are they likely to use it? Is there a credible causal explanation for the DHI to achieve its desired impact? What are the key components of the DHI? Which ones impact on predicted outcome? How do they interact with each other? What strategies should be used to support tailoring the DHI to participants over time? And the likely direction and magnitude of the effect of the DHI or its components compared to a comparator. We can then explore the methodology of the research design and appraisal itself, according to standard validated instruments. This might include consorts for RCTs, STROBE for observational studies, causal inference approaches to policy design, such as quasi-experimental designs or natural experiments, STARD for diagnostic accuracy, and equally to apply rigor for secondary evidence appraisal, such as using PRISMA formats or Robbins for evidence quality. When progressing finally to thinking about the economic evaluation itself, we in the UK academic sector and NICE still essentially use this decision framework to determine the presentation of the analysis, with NICE still recommending cost-utility analysis for funding decisions informed by incremental cost-effectiveness ratios, cost-effectiveness acceptability curves, ICEs, and net monetary benefits. However, a body of evidence shows that the complexities inherent in DHI appraisal include a broad range of diffused health and non-health impacts that has led to the recommendations that economic evaluations also present cost-consequence analysis with disaggregated costs and outcomes. We do know that DHIs evolve and adapt as they're implemented. They can have feedback loops based on user interaction. They can have complex cost structures depending on uptake. They can require significant investment costs up front, or also to adapt to interoperability needs with existing digital architecture. They have an ability to be personalized. They may collate or interface with complex services or be delivered in different modes. However, to date, it is broadly considered that health economic models can still account for and accommodate for these complex characteristics, in the incremental cost and benefit estimates across the lifetime when taking an account of an implementation science and equity effects lens. So what I provide in this slide is a reference that's captured many of the sort of research aspects that have highlighted complexities that should be considered for economic evaluation. And out of this broader body of work, 2 checklists have emerged as the key frameworks for reporting economic evaluations for digital health innovations. The first is the adapted CHEERS checklist for AI, called the Consolidated Health Economic Evaluation Reporting Standards for Interventions Using Artificial Intelligence, and it's adapted from the most recent 2022 edition of CHEERS. It utilizes many of the same components, factors, but some of these are extended to specifically consider aspects that are impacted by AI design or DHI composition. These might include the classification of the AI by its intended purpose and risk tier, the AI technique that is used, whether it is locked or static or adaptive, the version under evaluation, the purpose of the intervention, including its potential impact on care, intended users, and how it is expected to provide benefit. The framework also extends to user autonomy to indicate whether the AI intervention is directive or whether the user retains autonomy to make a care decision. It uses usual factors of perspective, time horizon, and discount rate, but when it comes to selection of outcomes, these are extended to consider health outcomes, diagnostic outcomes, process outcomes, or other multiple outcomes. In terms of measuring AI effects, one is expected to describe the data source for the AI intervention's impact on outcomes. If it learns over time, explaining how this affects the performance at an individual level and how that was measured. To describe how the AI component of the intervention was developed, including the training data used and how errors and biases were identified. Describing the components of the intervention and its performance estimates and the validation of those, and how comparators could directly or indirectly provide a health benefit, and so forth. The other checklist that has emerged in the last year extends economic evaluation of DHIs and AI to implementation science. Once again, this utilizes a PICO framework, hence PICO at the beginning of the framework's title. But once again, it extends many of the factors to consider special user characteristics and to look at functionality within the intervention or the components itself, such as design elements to achieve the key functions, situations or thresholds where a DHI can be used, purposes or different purposes for the same approach, changes in care, reductions in health-related risks, non-health-related risks, including data privacy or the use of personal data. Furthermore, it looks at the implications for the timing and the benefit of the timeliness of the device, such as timely delivery of services could potentially improve outcomes, the setting domain and the interaction of the geographic location, the patient's location and the care setting, aspects around communication domains, technology domains, finance, regulation, and medical liability. So these updated frameworks are included in the Equator Network for enhancing the quality and transparency of the research, which comes highly recommended for economic evaluation. And with regards to transforming healthcare towards quintuple aims, Digital health innovations, like all goods and services, provide both benefits and risks. Perhaps we haven't resolved all appraisal methodologies to accommodate for rigor and rapidity, but across the research networks, attempts to consider this are ongoing, including this announcement from NICE yesterday at ISPOR from their real-world evidence team that their health technology assessment innovation lab would be developing guidance for tech developers and best practices for AI-based methods to support evidence generation, evaluation of technologies incorporating AI for health economic modeling, and use of AI support to improve efficiency of NICE's own internal processes. So our era is often described as the fourth industrial revolution, where our physical and digital world collide and combine. Big data, AI, machine learning, digital innovations intersect with human networks and global industrial capacity. One estimate of the growth of the digital healthcare market is a forecast of 15% compound annual growth rate, up from $233 billion in 2022. For those interested, that is greater than the nominal GDP of Hungary. DHI offers much promise to the future in terms of benefits, but also holds risk, particularly likely to disrupt the status quo in terms of opportunities for the development of infrastructure and architecture according to jurisdictional oversight. There may be a need to enhance the development of funding models, create new item numbers, and consider arrangements for private, public, and industry relationships. The risks moving forward will require regulatory guardrails to protect citizens from unintended consequences, and embedded monitoring and evaluation for cost effectiveness can be an important aspect in managing innovation for health gains and equity. I'm happy to hear from anyone your comments, questions, and also if you disagree. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much for that, Liz. The one question we do have in the Q&A at this point is something that's just a request for your slides. Which, if you're happy for us to do that, we will happily share those on the NOAA website, but that's entirely up to you, of course.
Very happy to do that. Delighted that they'll be helpful.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else has a question they'd like to add to the Q&A. Okay, well, while we wait for folks to come up with their questions, I guess I'll just start maybe by asking you, what's your sort of one, like in a couple of sentences, your key takeaway around digital health and what decision makers should really be focused on, if we're thinking about how evaluations apply in the context of decision making, not at necessarily a level of NICE, but at a more local level, and what kind of advice would you give to decision makers there?
I think the helpful thing that NICE flagged and identified through this process for everyone, which can be applied to local decision makers, is around this aspect of clinical risk. They noted the explosion in technologies that might all require or request some form of appraisal and evaluation. But essentially what they identified was the key aspect was, in the same way that you would wish to have a drug or a device or a treatment assessed for its clinical risk, that was the key focus and aspect, was around clinical safety. And so that was the real factor that required thorough and rigorous oversight and review. Thereafter, one could look at these other factors and roll them up together in any broader form of cost effectiveness analysis. But that was the one sort of a clear focus that was not able to be changed or adapted. So there are many new apps that start, that stop, that are opened and developed and suddenly disappear that will be transformative in our broader digital world. But this aspect of where we actually really focus our efforts should be around considering real aspects of clinical risk. And that was a learning that I took away from that process.
Great, thank you. We have one question from an IHE colleague of mine, Rebecca Marsh, who says, thank you for your presentation, with an exclamation point. That didn't come across necessarily the way I said it. But do you have any experience with economics and decision-making supports for innovative agreements for innovative drugs and med tech? And I guess some context is that we do a lot of work here at the IHE in that area, and digital is probably an area where we might want to explore some different ways of funding interventions or treatments or technologies.
Yes, I don't particularly have experience in that. I mean, there's been a lot of debate around outcomes-based funding models or other approaches. But ultimately, in terms of the types of evidence generation that are required in the UK for mandatory reimbursement, at the end of the day, there wasn't necessarily a sense that new funding approaches would change the framework for economic evaluation. Because at the end of the day, that was just a different mechanism for funding it. But in terms of the economic evaluation itself, this gathering and generation of evidence towards, the sort of framework within the willingness to pay structure that we have prepared already. So in terms of your approach in Canada, I can't necessarily speak to that. Here, NICE has decided to go down this pathway of three different processes: early value versus general HTA and late stage assessment. And the first is really focused on supporting evidence generation for that. But in terms of funding legacies and new creative funding approaches, I probably wouldn't have a lot to offer in that.
Okay, well, thank you. So another question. So again, thank you for a great presentation. In terms of cost effectiveness studies, should only tier C technologies be examined? For instance, one may be improving physicians' efficiencies, but that may not change funding pressures the insurer may have.
Absolutely, and with apologies, that probably didn't come across well. Certainly, all things that require funding within any costing health system do require economic evaluations. This was really looking at that sort of regulatory framework, but I would certainly support this aspect that we have to work within a cost curve and a cost budget, and so economic evaluation is the key bullet that can help us to understand where those pressures will lie. I would say that certainly economic evaluation linked to implementation science, so looking at adoption and scale up and other aspects that enhance any economic appraisal is important, but certainly all of it would benefit from economic evaluation being undertaken.
Excellent, thank you. Another question come up. How do we balance the added complexity of building models that address the key challenges of digital health technologies with the need for quicker results because of the frequent updates of digital health technologies?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and this is where academics probably can think about new approaches to modeling, new statistical designs, utilizing Bayesian statistics, other aspects that can be filtered or reworked with modeling. I'm not an expert in that, but I think that might be a path we have to go in order to work in a more rapid environment for generating evidence for decision making.
Yeah, that's I think a challenge that we've faced at IHE as well, and I'm sure others on this call have faced in in regards to digital health technologies. So probably one of the, from a technical standpoint, one of the hardest things to address, in my view. Okay. Just waiting to see. That's all the current questions. If anyone has any more questions, now's the time to put them in the Q&A. So we'll give you a minute or so to do that. But what's next for your work, and what are the areas where you're looking to maybe evolve some of this and go further?
Yes, we would like to look at new methodological developments within economic evaluation to support this. We work very responsively at the moment to a lot of research requests around algorithms for predicting risk or optimizing treatments. Still a lot of high prevalence sort of mental health treatments as well, so such as digital health innovations, such as apps for supporting people with depression and so forth. But ultimately, I think there is a sense within those of us working in economic evaluation of digital health innovations that we're really going to need to be thinking about new methods to appraise these, so that we can contribute in a sort of broader way than waiting for large clinical trials, which is the primary mechanism of undertaking that at the moment.
Right, and with large clinical trials of digital health technologies, by the time the trial is over, the technology may very well have moved on, of course, and so that may be a bit of a challenge. But and have you given any thought to approaches like whole disease modeling, so that you have large complicated models already built, and then you plug and play with different sorts of interventions and things like that? Is that something you've ever considered for digital health?
It's certainly something that we would like to consider. We're not there yet. We know that is happening at NICE, and that's certainly part of their innovation lab, is they're building some of that. And particularly where you have infectious disease or epidemiology models that are built and have been designed over many years, there's more flexibility there to do that sort of work. We're not at that point at this stage, but it is certainly something that we would like to consider. And certainly with the data sets that are being developed within primary care, this is another area where we'd like to grow.
Great. I mean, I think there's lots of potential with whole disease models for that sort of thing, especially to potentially get quicker answers to things in a fast changing landscape. But so we have another question. So wondering, how can economic evaluations account for the limited evidence of effectiveness and harms of many DHTs, especially outside those associated with high risk? Is there a risk of over or underestimating the value of some technologies because we just don't know of some potential broad benefits or harms?
I think that is possible, and certainly to date, one of the challenges as well is that so many of these evaluations are pilot, they're small scale, and we haven't scaled them and adopted them in such a way that we actually have a significant population that we're working with. So there is a significant risk of over or underestimating benefits and harms.
Yeah, and with a lot of these technologies, I imagine, without necessarily needing to go through regulatory approvals the same way that a drug does, the trials may not be designed in the right ways to capture those. And so until the technology is in use and we're collecting post-use data, we may never know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's no more questions in the Q&A box. So with that, I'm not sure, we can't applaud, I guess. It's 4 years of online seminars, and I still am not quite sure how we do applause. I guess we can do the reaction applause that some have been doing. So thank you very much for joining us and talking about your work. We really appreciate you being here and spending some time with us, especially given that it is time for a cup of tea in the telly. But for others on the call, I had it here a second ago. The next NOAA round seminar will be presented by Dr. Petros Petroevangelou from the University of Toronto, and it's scheduled for January 15th, 2025. The topic will be long-term health and socioeconomic outcomes after preterm birth. So please visit the website noah.ca, noahe.ca, to register. And if you're not subscribed to the mailing list, please do subscribe to get updates on all of the events and opportunities. So thank you again, Liz. It's been wonderful to have you, and thank you everyone for attending.